welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Mutually Collaborate, an initiative by ULP and Old Mutual. I'm Tepo Mohotu, COO of ULP, and your host for this program tonight. Today, we delve into funding readiness, exploring factors leading to funding rejections, providing a high-level overview of funding options, discussing types of funding at various business stages, and concluding with insights into what funders seek. Joining me, I've got Thabo Hleza, who is an expert in this field. Thabo, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Tapo.
Great. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience today?
So I'm Thabo Hleza. I head up the investment business at the Masizana Fund, which is the initiative of the Old Mutual Group.
Thank you, Thabo. It's truly valuable to have you with us today. Let's delve straight into it. The entrepreneurial space, it's really a complex environment and faced with many challenges. And today you're going to help us unpack these specific elements in terms of entrepreneurship. What's your view just on the overall challenges that people are having with funding in this space?
Thank you, Tapo. So there's a number of challenges that entrepreneurs face, right? But one of the biggest, and it's demonstrated by the latest data, 70% of the funding applications are rejected, but generally because of the low level of readiness. And across a number of areas, whether it's poor business plan, it's low market viability, it's inadequate financial record keeping, and lack of understanding of the different funding options that are available.
Great stuff. Thanks, Thabo. So I always say there's people that have ideas with money, and there are people that have no ideas and have no money, which I feel like they are in the West space. But there are people that have ideas, but they don't have funding. And I believe also that there are people that have some funding that they'd like to support, but they are not in the business of really starting businesses and all that. Our focus today is going to be on businesses that needs funding, and we're going to look at those areas where these people can be helped in terms of what is it that they need to look out for, and what businesses are, what funders in actual fact are looking forward into these particular spaces. Let's watch as Thabo, you take us through this specific aspect.
Today, we'll unpack what is funding readiness, what is not, what are some of the different funding instruments that are available to small businesses, what are some of the key things that funders or investors look for, and how to make your business ready for funding. Funding readiness doesn't solely depend on having a brilliant idea. That is not funding readiness. Funding readiness is beyond securing financial support, but it's about developing your business to the right market and industry standard for the stage so that it is regarded as a credible investment for investors and financiers. It is demonstrating that your organization is at a stage where it can effectively make use of and benefit from the financial injection. It's a state of development and suitability of an organization to secure funding. To put it simply, it's demonstrating that the organization has the necessary capacity and capability to respond to investors and financiers' requirements and able to respond to the customer and the market needs accordingly. It's important to understand your stage of your business and these different funding options, right? And which one is right for my business, given the funding model, given my business model, and given the stage that the business is at. So most funders, irrespective of the stage of the business, they typically look for validated investment case. So for a business that is at its growth phase, how do you see that? That is demonstrated by some of the project that has been executed, services that has been delivered, the tangible results that has been achieved, whether from a revenue or from an impact. For a startup, it's very difficult to demonstrate that. So what is important at this stage is critical to demonstrate that there's a capable and capacitated management team that is committed to delivering on this strategy, that fully understands this business, understands the value proposition, understand the market that they are responding to. They've done in-depth analysis on this market, understand the competition, they understand what value they're bringing and how they're differentiating themselves against this competition. And here you're looking at getting funding from crowdfunding, microloans, angel investors, VC, your friends and family, and the other Fs accordingly.
Tabo, that was great insights from what we've just seen now. So among the stages that businesses goes through and funding is required into these different stages, which one would we say funders struggle more with in the 4 stages that you've just described?
Yeah, thanks, Tepo. I think you've got the seed funding, early stage growth, and exit. Typically, and this is across the different stages, funders look for validated investment case, right? And that is demonstrated by traction, the work you have done in the space, and some of the results you have achieved, whether it's from revenue or it's from impact. It's easier to demonstrate that at the growth stage, right? But it's very difficult at the early stage because you are really starting the business, a startup, hence then it's really seed funding. And that's why it's important to make sure at that stage, although you don't have the track record, but you have a very capable management team that is committed into this venture that will help you then execute this strategy well. Hence then it's easier for friends, family, angel investors, and the others to come in and support, because at this stage you're really supporting the idea and the management team that is running with this venture.
Great stuff, Tabo. So with that, I would imagine there's a lot of myths around funding and all this particular topic you've just unpacked today. Do you mind dispelling some of this myth?
So I think the first one is that you need a perfect credit record, right? Unfortunately, in the current environment you're operating in, it's not possible. Right. So certain funders, whether you're looking at grant funding, you're looking at equity investors, they look for more than just the credit record. You look to the solid management team, you look for the viable business model. You look for the growth potential of this business. That's what one of equity investors are looking for over and just above this credit record. And I think the other one is around this business plan, that you don't need a business plan to raise for funding, right? And I often say, to start the business, you don't need the business plan. But for you to raise funding, a well-crafted business plan is critical. Because a crafted business plan says to the funders, I understand my business, here's my value proposition, this is the market I'm serving, this is how big this market, this is why I think someone will pay, right, to have this problem taken away. This is the projections that I'm putting forward. This is why I need your money to execute this strategy that I'm putting forward. Funders and investors really want the comfort that you've got a plan, you've got a vision to execute this business. That's why they should put money into it. Because the reality is, your investment associate and other funders are speaking for you in a room that will never be able to get to. That's why it's critical that you have a very well-crafted and concise business plan.
Makes a lot of sense. Now it makes sense why then people would talk about you don't really need a business plan and all this stuff. But I guess for you to start and executing your business and go through that process, it is really you just need to start. I would imagine. But when you get to a stage where you're saying, but now I'm either growing my business and I want to expand a little bit more, then I need that funding. Then you need that paperwork to be done, and then I think no better way to really use a business plan to capture that.
Precisely.
Precisely. No, great stuff, Tabo. So let's maybe jump into some of the factors that cause rejections for the businesses as they request funding into this particular space. I think let's watch at this concept.
Now let us understand what are some of the factors that contribute to funding rejection. Latest stats indicate that 70% of funding applications are rejected because of low level of readiness across these 5 key areas. One is poor business plan. We'll unpack this later in the discussion, but there's a view in the market that you don't need a business plan to raise capital. You certainly don't need a business plan to start a business. But to raise capital, you do need a business plan. What does a business plan do? It says to the funders, this is the problem that I'm solving. This is how big this problem is. This is the market. I've done analysis on this market. I understand it. I've got a strategy in place to respond to this market. I've got a capable team that will help me execute this. Right? These are the projections that will achieve as a result of. Right? And this is why then I need the funding. And this is how the business will be profitable and scalable as a result. The second part is poor credit history. I think the similar effort and time that is put in checking our own health history, the same should be dedicated in reviewing our businesses. What came as a result of COVID, we've seen a number of SMEs with poor credit history. Poor credit history in itself is not an automatic disqualifier. But what it says is, how are you conducting your affairs, especially pre-COVID? We understand that during COVID, you've lost business, you've lost certain markets, but how are you conducting yourselves? What steps have you taken to make the necessary arrangement with your financiers? And this is where most SMEs fall short, that they don't take the necessary step and be proactive to make arrangements with the financiers. And as a result, they're now in judgment listed, they've got defaults against their records. And when financiers look at their records, all it says that you have failed to make the necessary arrangement to manage your affairs accordingly. Inadequate financial records is another one. And I think of critical here, some SMEs are great engineers, but are poor financial managers. So it's important to make sure that you elicit the professionals that understand how to put together for financial records. And the other part is low market viability, and we've covered that, and it's also limited understanding of funding. So hopefully the section on different financial instrument and option has helped to bring some light on some of these different funding options that are available to SMEs.
So many critical factors, Thabo, that you've covered that we need to be aware of. What are some of the critical ones and why, out of the ones that you've just covered now, in terms of the rejections reasons here?
I think one we've covered around the business plan, that I think it's important. And one of the things I always say, some of the business that we fund, SMEs might not be able to craft the business plan themselves. They have a great idea, but then they're not able to reduce that into a concise plan. So you don't need to have a voluminous plan, but be able to get then a consultant that is able to craft a very concise and a realistic plan that you can be able to articulate to a 5-year-old very precisely. This is the problem I'm solving, this is my market, these are the projections, this is why you must invest in my business. Secondly, the credit history is critical. The same process we go through in checking our own whole health status, the business needs to be afforded the same. Secondly, make sure you understand the different funding options that are available. Oftentimes, we see businesses giving equity away much earlier, right? Because they are now desperate for the funding, and they end up losing equity to others much earlier in the process, whereas whether a convertible instrument or other instrument could have served similar purpose without losing control of the business.
Wow. Doing that due diligence is really critical at that particular stage, and making sure that you don't give in too early.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think one of the thoughts around this particular place in terms of, do we really ask for funding when we really need funding, or we just ask for funding because there's funders out there and people have this notion of, oh, you must apply for funding. Yeah. How do we balance that?
And this is why the business plan also becomes critical, right? The mistake we often make, we put a big plan, give it to funder once when we're desperate for funding, and never check that plan again, right? What you need to do, your plan needs to be reviewed at minimum on a quarterly basis, right? Because your plan then says, this is the strategy and this is the funding requirement that I'm going to need in a 2 or 3 years' time. Then in the process, you are then necessarily caught off guard and desperate in your funding raising process, right? But in end of year one, you start having the necessary conversations with the funders that are good for a business. Because at the end of this year, I'm going to need funding in 6 or 12 months. Start having those capital raising conversations. But oftentimes, that plan is not in place. 2 months, I've got a working capital crisis, then I need funding.
Okay, intriguing topic indeed. I've learned a lot thus far. Let's maybe look at where you really unpack and elaborate on what funders are really looking for when it comes to funding.
What are some of the key elements that funders look for in assessing funding application? One, business plan. Make sure that your business plan is clear, concise, and very realistic business plan. To an extent that you elicit support from service provider or consultant to put that for you, make sure that you still own that business plan. You are able to sit across the funder and take them through that business plan line by line, right? Secondly, demonstrate the growth strategy of this business, where the potential risk indicates that you understand what those risks are. You also understand what are the mitigation strategy against those risks. Financial statements, make sure that those are accurate and they're up to date and they're professionally prepared. Cash flow projections, there must be detailed monthly projections for the first 12 months, at least for the next 36 months projection that demonstrate how this business is growing month on month, year on year. Use of funds, your use of funds needs to respond to your growth plan and the sustainability of this business. I think we've covered in detail credit history. Review your credit history on an ongoing basis. Assess where there are issues and be upfront with your financiers and make the necessary arrangements timeously. Demonstrate your commitments into this business. Half the time, given the realities of our country, especially for young people, we might not have the required own contribution. But demonstrate that you've got a management team that is capable and committed into this venture. Demonstrate that there's collateral, assets or security in place that responds to this funding ask. Demonstrate that you understand the market, you've done analysis on this market, and you can show that this is a viable business model. You understand who your customers, you understand your competitors, and you can clearly shows what are the market trends and why you think you will survive in this space. What is your value proposition? What are you bringing differently? Demonstrate market commitments. What market commitments are, whether it's offtake agreements, the project that you have executed in that market. Show that this is a profitable model that matches to the market demand. Indicate that this venture is scalable, that demonstrate that it's output without any disproportionate cost. And if this is a social and impact and impact business, indicate the social and environmental impact that this business will be making, whether it's job creation, a support for those in the outlying areas, whatever impact that this business is making, demonstrate that, especially if you are looking to raise funding from impact funds. Finally, compliance and governance. Make sure that you understand what the license and permits that are required for that particular industry, right? Secondly, otherwise you're going to fall into the trap of working in the business if there are no processes and systems that enables you to work on the business. And I cannot overemphasize this enough. Make sure that there's a solid data room with up-to-date records, right? Because one of the things that takes longer to close on applications because the inadequate financial records, and some are very dated, and some do not respond to the ask that is put before financiers.
Wow, that was amazing, Thabo, going through what funders really look for when it comes to entrepreneurs requesting funding. But I think this issue of proven track record, I'd like us to maybe delve a little bit on that and really unpack what exactly are we talking about? What is this proven track record, which is a great factor that funders look into?
So again, depending on the life stage of that business, right? If you are looking for growth capital, proven track record is quite critical, because you're saying to the funders, I have done this, executed, this is the traction, this is the results I've achieved, and this is the impact. Over and above having a great and a capable team, this is why you invest in me, because there's this track record. And it's easy again for corporate partners to come on board, whether giving you off-take agreements on the back of the track record, right? But if you're looking at seed or startup, it's very difficult to demonstrate similar track record. But then what becomes critical is, do you have a capable and committed team that understand the market, understand your clear value proposition, that can run with the strategy, and hence then I should invest in it now. Because realistically is, at this stage, I'm investing at the potential. And that potential is delivered by this great team. Right? Up until that is executed, only then we could start saying there's a track record.
Okay, so I guess then for that startup, because that's where that debate and challenge with this whole track record is, it's mainly for the startup. But then what advice then would you give to the startups to do right from day one so that they deliberately build that track record? What are some of the advice you could give around that?
So one, make sure that you assemble as a solid team. I cannot overemphasize this enough. Have a solid, capable team that is culture fit. Team that is able to build reputation and network in the different chosen markets. Also make sure that you put process and systems in place. And those don't have to be fancy or overly expensive, because that enables you then to work on the business than in the business. Then you can drive their strategy and start executing at a small scale. Because your traction does not need to be this massive execution, but one needs to have a clear case that I've executed at this level. For me to get to the next level in the market that I'm playing in, it's a numbers and volume game. I cannot get there unless I've got funding. And that's why then it's critical that even at the small scale, you execute accordingly.
Wow. We normally throw away all the receipts and everything, and we just go on. I mean,
Exactly.
we're thinking, where is these things are going to be required? But thanks for that advice, and really valuable. Maybe just a follow-up then on one of the aspects that I just had you talk about now around commitment, specifically in the early stages of the whole process. I think you mentioned that funders really needs to see that commitment. Do you want to elaborate a little bit around that?
Yeah, and I think there's also this myth that commitment is about how much own contribution skin in the game, as it's often called, right? And I think the reality is, in a South African context, if you're an impact funder looking to support youth and people in the rural areas, for example, they might not have that necessary own contribution. So you cannot have that as an automatic disqualifier. But what then says, do I have a committed management team that understands this business, that are committed to driving it forward? That is one way you demonstrate commitment, right? Secondly, if you've been able to amass assets, are you able to put forward assets as your collateral or security, right? That is another way you demonstrate commitment. If you're looking for commercial funding, oftentimes that cash contribution will be required. But what is often said is, I don't have the cash commitment, then my funding is rejected. But we are able to demonstrate commitment through these other elements I've highlighted.
Awesome. Thabo, that was really amazing, and I really enjoyed the flow of how this thing has, how you've unpacked these things. Even me, I can easily follow and understand. Maybe just coming to conclusion, what are some of the takeaways if you think about the overall topics we've discussed, right from the stages, from the actual rejection reasons, and what funders are looking for? What are some of the takeaways that you'd like our viewers to take note of?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the session. I think one is make sure that in your funding raising journey, you really understand the stage of your business and who are the funders that are available at that stage, and how do you make your business attractive for those funders. Because the mistake that you will make if you're looking for your business requires impact funding, if you're not able to demonstrate that to impact funds, you're going to lose a whole lot of opportunity. So that is critical. Secondly, it's also important to make sure that you get your affairs right. Whether it's your credit history, your financial record, make sure that those are up to date and are accurate. Some of us, you could be a great engineer, but the finances might not be your strong point. Make sure that you get professionals to put that together for you. Record keeping must be on point. One of the delays that causes application to be concluded much later in the process because your data room is missing a whole lot of critical information. Make sure that that is in place. Some of the industries you're operating in require certain licenses, contract, and permits. Demonstrate one that you understand what those are and how to procure them, that you are on the journey to procuring those accordingly.
Wow. Thanks, Thabo. Viewers, thank you very much for engaging us. I really believe that entrepreneurship is an answer to the problems that this country is facing, but we better do it right. And part of doing it right is make sure that we equip ourselves with the necessary skills required to navigate this space. Today, we've just covered some of those skills that you need. Remember to follow us on Unleashing Leadership Potential on all our social media channels, and also reach out to Old Mutual and Masisizane using our contact details on the screen. Thank you very much. God bless.